Yeah.
of the wording of the action item, but I think we still have to give.
Sure, and I can do that as we get to it, right? Or I can flip it
Right at
here.
the beginning, because right at the beginning, 'cause you have to
Yeah,
approve the
okay.
agenda.
All right, yeah. Okay, so our August 21st, 2024 meeting of the Rochester Board of Education is hereby called to order. Will you please call the roll?
Christine Goliath,
Here, yes.
Amy Reynolds,
Here?
Doug Carly,
Here.
Bob Childs,
Here.
Todd Hannah,
Here.
Chris Jewell.
Here.
Okay, so prior to starting the meeting, we need to amend our agenda. Item 6.3 read approval of NCL government capital lease agreement. And we need to amend that to be discussion of NCL government capital lease agreement.
Do you need a motion?
Our administrator is still reviewing information and not ready to bring forth a recommendation to the board yet. Is there a motion to amend the agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Thank you. We need to call the roll on that one. Call the roll.
Carly,
Yes.
Dr. Begolias,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Childs,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yeah.
Mr. Hannah.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay, recognition of visitors. Are there any visitors who wish to address the board tonight? Okay,
Thank you.
hop up.
I was real close to not. Hi, welcome back. Happy new school year. 2 meetings in a row that I missed, so it's a real miss. So sorry I missed you. Hey, the only thing that I wanted to do, I want to say a couple things. One, let's have a great year. My sentiments of last year still stand. If there are ways that you think that interested parents can be valuable, either to the district or to the board, right? We only see what we see our parts of the roadways where we can be helpful, let me know. Mama, and Great Places to Work certification is on the agenda for approval, and I understand I missed the first discussion of it. I'm going to urge a no vote only because only 6 school districts in the state are Great Places to Work, which seems like then it's an invitation to be trendsetters and leaders in that space, but it's just, as someone who works in retention and recruitment, it is not work. As I understand that educators look for being a great place for how to drive their choices. And I think we've got lots of things that we want to be doing with $11,000 that are not that. I talked my employer out of it as well, so not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do. So thanks. With that, have a super great meeting for the start of the meeting.
Thank you so much. Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion for the board? Call the roll?
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Childs,
Yes.
Dr. Begolias,
Yes.
Mr. Carly.
Yes.
Let me scroll way down now. Okay, financial reports. Dr. Kaler, will you please present the financial reports and year-to-date fund summary?
Because those were done for month end July.
That's right.
The last meeting, so
Okay.
the only financial documents this time are the bills.
Okay, and is there a motion to approve the bills as presented?
I'll make that motion.
And if there's a second, then we can do discussion if there's discussion afterwards. So is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion from the board? Yes.
I just wanted to thank Dr. Kaler for fulfilling my request of last month to be more descriptive.
Good. Keep that going.
One other question, and not something to say. I know we approved the Ameren for the energy agreement with Angie a couple months ago. Would you be able to report on kind of where that went with the hedging and what the savings we've seen on that? Again, that's not a clearly I'm not asking you to do that today, but as we get, and we're only like 2 months into that agreement, so we make it.
Okay, call the roll.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Dr. Begolias,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds,
Yes.
Mr. Carly,
Yes.
Mr. Childs.
Yes.
Okay, we have the tentative budget fiscal year 25 and the district's fiscal year is from July 1st to June 30th. Of course, the tentative budget has been placed on display. Prior to a public hearing and adoption, the Finance Committee will review the fiscal year 25 budget. Dr. Kaler, will you please provide a summary overview of the tentative budget?
The summary or the budget is obviously a tentative draft. It was put on display on the 16th. A couple things I want to point out this year, we did do several curriculum upgrades. You'll see those in instruction. You'll see those in instruction under purchase services, if it's online curriculum materials, or if it's actual hard textbooks, it comes under supplies and materials. The next thing is you'll notice on instructional 0700, there's two items or a large number there in comparison to the previous year. We need to look at a new driver's ed car, and that's the difference.
Okay.
That needs to be considered for this budget. Talked to Megan Hawkins, and both of our cars need replaced. I've considered them once we do that on a cycle over the next couple of years. The last part of this, if you look at Fund 60, the reason it shows a huge deficit is Fund 60 right now is that money is all bonded and sitting in Illinois funds in our investment account. That is all set aside for construction. Those construction bills will be coming. As soon as I get a drawdown, that number will be changed before next month, so I can say, here's what our expected drawdown is for the entire year of that Fund 60. Every year, we always budget contingencies within line items as well as the contingency line. Those are like salaries. We added to salaries in case we had to add positions last minute. As we get closer and into to our committee meeting and to the final budget hearing, we'll tighten those up because we'll know more about if there's any positions that need to be added last minute. I've seen that happen in school districts where you get an influx of a certain grade and you can add a teacher between August 5th or 6th and school starting. And that's why you put those in that rough budget that starts. We just found out CPPRT money yesterday afternoon. So that is not reflected in the budget that was in the board packet. That will be in the one that's the final presentation in September.
I'll just add the CPPRT is down it's down 32.6%.
Yes.
32.6, that the CPPRT is down. For our district, while that does have an impact, whenever those revenues, they started rising historically during the pandemic, but reports were it was going to drop again, that would bottom out. So every year we have budgeted the same like we did historically low revenues. So it hasn't changed our budget, but it certainly will change the dollars because we still receive those monies and we put a lot of those monies into the operational maintenance fund. So we will see an impact there. And we did learn recently this summer too, but it is reflected in the budget. We are tier 1 of this space funding district again. So that we did receive extra tier money for that, which is nice. That was something we were hopeful for. Obviously, you always want to be tier 2, 3, or 4, but tier 1, you do get that tier money that we can put into place, which will also help us as ESSER funds expire.
So are those amounts confirmed then on the tier funding?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, not just the status, we know the actual dollars.
Yes, ISB has distributed, they are official, it came from their finance department, they've sent to all superintendents, so we will get those. Now again, how evidence-based funding works. You're guaranteed to get your base funding minimum, then you get your tier funds. Your tier funds can be prorated, but it's going to be prorated tier 4 first, and then all the way down to tier 1. We do not anticipate a proration this year. There's no talk of that. Typically in an election year, you won't see a proration, but it could happen. Thus far, there has not been proration since the adoption of evidence-based funding in what was that 2010. There have not been any prorations handed out. We're not hearing any news of that. So we should be able to bank on receiving these funds.
That's our new baseline for
Next year.
And we received our first EBF payments. And if those multiplied out across the year, the difference would be our tier funding. So if they're going to prorate it, it's going to be later at the end of the year. But right now, we received our first one, and our second one was just vouchered today, so we should be receiving that next couple days.
And then on the capital projects, we have the schedule kind of a payout because it's not going to fall perfectly on one fiscal year versus the other.
Oh, no, that's why our bonding, we're looking at about a $27 million project. I put in 19.5 this year. Once I get the drawdown, that might go up or down based on the drawdown. Obviously, if it goes up, means we're getting the project done faster. Because we know the estimated budget amount. So I'll have that tightened up before the next meeting.
Okay. Right, no action there. Move on to administrator reports and principals and directors report at the last meeting that we had earlier this month. So we are gave them the night off. So we're gonna move into the superintendent report, and specifically, as I told you earlier this week, Mr. Cox, I'd like you to focus on our student academic data, and the summary of assessment data that we have right now, because it's outstanding.
Yes, it is, and thank you.
And I will say, let me say one more thing. I want to say something, and give credit to Mrs. Viola, the junior high counselor, because I talked to her, my son's in 7th grade now. I was talking to her this week. And she said a quote, and I thought, man, if that isn't spot on for what everybody needs to know. And my son and myself and everybody included is, when you water the good, it grows. Whatever you water grows. You water the good, it grows. You water the bad, it grows. So I want you to focus. I asked Mr. Cox specifically to focus on this outstanding student assessment data that we have right now, because we want that to grow. That's what we're watering tonight.
Thank you very much for the setup here. You know, I'm very happy, and we'll have more information to come, and principals will be able to report this, but these are hot off the presses. And I was just able to finalize some of the summary for you yesterday, and I won't go into the detail because I did put quite a bit of information in there for you for the student achievement results. But this report, and we'll focus next month on mathematics. This month I focus specifically on literacy and our literacy scores, because there was a lot there. I want to focus first on our early childhood and elementary literacy scores and our formative assessments and Ames Web benchmarking. What you can see, the long and short of it is, our students are learning across the board at expected or above expected rates. Where I'm really excited is when you look at our student subgroups, whether it's our formative assessments or our IAR, our students are growing at a higher than expected rate, which is the name of the game. We know our students all learn at different rates. Some students need more help than others, but we're meeting them where they are, and we're going from there, and we are showing student growth across the board. At Rochester Elementary 2-3, we showed growth. That elementary school is targeted. It is because of a specific subgroup that it's targeted, not unlike the junior high school, which I did make sure I included the junior high school scores from when they were targeted to today. And it's not just the academic work they're doing, it's also the social, emotional, and leader need and work. And you saw some of the results of that presentation last week. So there's a lot of good work going on. And if nothing else, you see a lot of greens and blues, which is a good thing in that report. So please take some time to take a look at that. If you have any questions, it's a huge celebration. The other piece I want to highlight within this report is that the difference between the high school and the elementary schools, junior high school scores. We are data rich. Mrs. Shaw and I were talking about this, that we are data rich and have all types of assessments. The high school has fewer assessments. It's really the PSAT and the SAT. That's a different type of measure. We do show very good student growth in those, but they're very limited in what our students know and are able to do. So I didn't focus on that as much as the elementary, which is a foundational piece. The last thing I want to highlight on the investments we've made in early childhood, and they really are paying off. And if you will look at the Ames Web data and the number of kids last year, over the course of the year from the fall to spring, that were in tier 3 intense interventions and needed that was the red in that triangle. And you saw by the spring how few of kids were there. So those investments showed throughout the course of the year what we were able to do, not just with the teachers in the classroom, but also the support staff and the resources that we put with those programs. And the kindergarten is the foundation. If we don't have them ready to go, it's a problem. They're playing catch up the rest of the way through. So starting them in early childhood, getting them ready for school, having a strong kindergarten year, and then moving them into first grade. I'm happy to report all of the teachers who were there last spring to show that growth are back this year. So that's great news for our kids and the foundation to set up good things to come. So if there's any questions about that data, myself or the directors are here to answer those. And we really want to celebrate this. And you get the first look. I think you've seen these reports even before our principals have seen these. These are a report that gets emailed to us by ECHR, which is an independent group we have analyze our student data.
Any comments or questions?
The math stuff will be next.
Yes.
I mean, you combine this with what we talked about at our last meeting with the advanced placement results that are just almost eerie. They're so good. And it just shows, like, across the board, teachers are benefiting, are helping our students greatly in that cycle of learning all the way through. So.
The more we can highlight how outstanding our staff is and our kids, better.
Absolutely. Okay, Building committee, there was a building committee on August 13th. The minutes were provided as well as an update in the section of the board packet, and Mr. Hannah was there. Do you want to give us a verbal update?
Yes, so we met with SM Wilson, the construction management firm who took the bids for both projects, the outdoor project and the indoor project. And happy to report that everything's on budget. SM Wilson really did a great job at analyzing the budget in the beginning and being on target. I mean, to have all those different sections come in and be, you know, within and end up being where we expected them to be. I mean, it's actually really close. So I give them credit for.
Said the architect.
It's-
That's a
it's hard to
compliment.
do. It's really hard to do. So I commend them. They did a great job putting this all together and really analyzing the numbers up front so that we were all prepared. We knew it would be a little higher than we wanted to, but I think we've figured out ways to adjust and look at analyze those numbers and realize that I think we're on par, we're on budget. We'll be able to get 95% of everything we want to get done. We're at the moment, we're going to accept all bids, including 3 alternate bids. Those 3 alternate bids are the softball press box, the locker room at the football field, and you're gonna tell me the soccer field. Yeah, the soccer field will get turfed as well. So there are 2 alternate bids that we are not accepting. And those are the sub base, a different sub base for football, and a different sub base for soccer. Right? That's the 2 of them, right?
That is correct.
So that was just something that was presented to the contractors and the architect prior to bidding, and we wanted to just throw that in there and see if they were applicable and if it worked out. We thought it might be a wash with some different ways that they approached the sub base, but turns out it isn't. And it was a decent amount of money that we didn't want to spend on something that is new technology and not really tried and true in this area. So that was kind of one of the things that we, you know, at the time decided to. And then there's multiple discussions beyond that, but I think that's where we all landed. Is there anything you want me to add on that part?
The only thing, in response to a question, and Dr. Taylor and I have discussed that I'd like to at least have a discussion with the board here this evening, as once these are approved tonight, things start rolling, we'll see change orders sooner than later. Of course, we try to limit those, but they are inevitable, especially in a project of this size. So we'd like some discussion amongst the board. It's not feasible to review and approve every change order. You could have a change order as small as $5, right? If it's not a project. SM Wilson will be responsible for providing a listing of all change orders. We will have access to that. We would like to be able to go ahead and approve change orders to be efficient to move forward with the project. But whenever it gets to $50,000, if there's a change order that's at 50 or above, which matches also the bidding limit, then that's when we would bring it to the board for consideration and approval. If it's somewhere under that, 25 to 50, that would typically be a phone call that I would make to a building committee member and said, is this something we need to take or discuss further, especially if it's abnormal. Now, if it's a normal change, I don't think that's necessarily discussion worthy, but I know Mr. Hannah, that's your wheelhouse as an architect.
Yeah, the other thing I would want to add is that it's not just us approving change orders, right? I mean, we've got multiple layers between you, Mr. and Dr. Kaler, and SM Wilson and the architect. So, you know, there's multiple layers that's going to have to go through and get approval by. And I'm confident that SM Wilson's going to, you know, take a look at everything because they have the subcontracts right underneath them as a guaranteed maximum price. And I guess my only other question would be, and maybe you can answer this if you come up and talk about anything, but as a guaranteed maximum price, there are change orders, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to change the end price. Am I correct in that? You can, you can.
Yeah, thank you, Greg.
So in our GMP, there, can you see?
Yes.
We have things that come up and need to change the dollar amount, we still, then we would take those monies out of what we have, not change the overall value.
So I just want everybody to understand that the prices that we get, 99% chance that they will not go anywhere. But the reason we talk about change orders is that there are things that are out of SM Wilson's control, so.
So we'll be moving money from a contingency application to
Yeah.
So-
I agree.
So just to make sure everybody, realizes that's what's happening.
Want to stay right there, Greg? Maybe, maybe not. Chris, are we okay keeping this order? Or do you want to talk about capital lease agreement first?
Since it's not.
It's, yeah, that help us.
The order seemed out of place with that.
Sure. Yeah, we moved that to discussion instead. So we'll move into 6.2, which is the approval of construction bid packages for the RHS Science Wing Student Services and Outdoor Athletic Complex. So Greg and Bernie are both here from SM Wilson. And I think between them and Mr. Cox, give us a summary of the bid review process.
I think Mr. Hannah really captured everything we discussed with the building committee very, very well. This is the point in the meeting that we will approve the projects as Mr. Hannah said that the committee looked at this in detail. And I want to thank SM Wilson for the work they've done, talking to all the contractors and subcontractors, and making sure that our bids are not only valid, but they're also reliable. The recommendation would be to accept the bid that's presented and the alternates, with the exception of alternates 4 and 5. We would reject those. We would reject those at this time and move forward with that, which means we would be going with a different base. We are still exploring the types of base that we're putting in, but anything that we would do would be communicated to the board. So, with that, Greg, I'll turn it over to you.
I don't really have anything to add. Todd stole my speech. So said everything that I would say. We've done bids, we've done reviews. We agree with the top assessment, the base bid, and the first 3 alternates apply. The last 2 really don't apply. So that's the way we think about it.
Okay.
Can you address the construction schedule a little bit? I think we talked about that
Yes, we
at the
can.
building committee, and you were gonna maybe bring a little bit more information.
Turn it over to my team comment.
So schedule wise, really in the short term, what will happen is that with the approval, we'll go ahead and start sending out letter of intents to the subcontractors that we're recommending. We'll get them under contract. We'll get them going as far as submittals and getting that information in to start review. So we're really looking at the month of September to do that. First part of October, we would like to start the demolition aspect of it and get prepared to start with the soccer field turf. So those things would be concurrent to start in the month of October. We'll continue on as we go through a phase. We'll have to wait till football season's over to move over. So if we got, end of the year, beginning of the year, the football field, and then we kind of flow in that direction from the football field around with the baseball field additions, and then, the press box and the visitor and the main colonnade there and the entry. So that all kind of wraps up. Right now, we'd be roughly the first part of September of 25, where we would be under substantial completion, which means that we're really done. We're punch list. We're fixing the punch list. We're looking at testing and balancing, making sure mechanical systems in the addition and the renovation are working correctly for a good educational environment. And then in October of next year, 25 would be in a place where furniture would start to be brought in for anticipation of classes. Eventually, the first part of 26.
Wow.
That's generally kind of the schedule in a pretty high level discussion. We will try, we have a Gantt chart that we use. We'll try not to use that too much. It's hard, it's boring, it's not really that much fun to interact with. So Adam has worked with trying to use more pictures and the footprint to kind of describe, use colors within Bluebeam to kind of show that visually. It's a little bit easier to connect with instead of, a graph with a bunch of bars on. So that'll be kind of what we'll see moving forward when we have discussions about the schedules, more kind of a picture and something that we can relate to a little bit better. So.
Yeah, I have a question. Do you have any kind of a progress report or progress flow of activities? What things have to take place and when they're supposed to occur?
Yeah. So we have a program. It's Power Projects. Right now, it's about a 19-page. It's got several hundred activities in there. It's all logic based. One thing starts after the next thing. We kind of flow through that.
Do you have a master flow chart?
Yes, so that, again, it's 19 pages, it's a couple hundred activities, it's really not that exciting. That is what we developed that during design development. We put that out on the street, that's what subcontractors had for when they were bidding. That's part of the control and making sure the prices where we're at as far as duration and what we're buying. So that will keep track the whole time. Again, we'll try to summarize these things in a little bit better picture as far as how we're flowing like through the building and around the site.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're interested, or at least I am, is to see the flow of activity.
Yes.
What's coming up next, what's been done, how far we've progressed.
Yes, and so we've broken up, and you'll see, we've broken up the building into different sections. So we're gonna demo the building. We're gonna start where the existing canopy is now on the south end. We kind of wrap around with the foundations and come out of the ground with the addition. And then next summer, as we roll around, we'll do the existing classrooms, and we'll kind of hurry through that during the month, during the summer months next year, so we can turn it over in September. So we're rolling around as we're kind of going through the building. Same thing with the football field, soccer field. We kind of start from the north end, work our way out the new entry, and kind of get out of that way so we don't get stuck, back where we build something and we're trapped in the background.
With the soccer, or you feel pretty comfortable going between the boys and girls season as far as that time frame, even to kind of starting here in soccer season, and I wasn't sure which. Are you talking this fall season versus like next spring, or when did they start that?
The start of the soccer field would be in the October, this fall timeframe, and try to end by the end of the year. And then transition, that subcontractor would then just transition to the football field. So we're looking at that. We've had discussions as far as which, the seasons, and we've kind of sandwiched it in there.
So outside of tennis, soccer would be the first. People want something new.
October might be a little too early for football.
Okay.
It's early for soccer.
Could be.
We do,
I think they had a little up on weekends last year or something.
we do have a plan when they start mobilizing. We talked with Coach Kutcher about when we start mobilizing the entry road and whatnot to provide some logistics for the boys to be able to continue to practice. Because there will be a little bit of overlap, not with the construction, but just with setting up the logistics and all that. So Coach Kutcher's been involved with that.
Okay, are we ready to move on to?
We touched briefly on the flow of traffic. I think there was a illustration in the last meeting. I'm hearing a lot of blowback about the traffic flow and the concerns that people have. We're yet to hit their heavy sporting cycle, football and so forth. They're concerned about the traffic jam that we've already experienced, plus it's going to grow. That's the concern. Any thought on your part? Have you given that any thought other than what we've talked about so far? For instance, create a roadway between the campus and say Camelot, just to control the traffic burden.
We don't have.
I don't know if we have
Yeah, I don't
the
think.
property to be able to do that, or
Pathway over there,
or
don't
a
we?
plan for that. But I drop off 7th grade, junior high, so I'm on this campus and it's been flowing pretty well for me. But I think you're right in that when we see sport events happening, that it's going to definitely be a different beast. It's going to look different.
It's
That's a
going to
good
be a
question,
beast for
because
sure.
we talk about school, how the morning is in, this 29 entrance, mornings in, evenings out,
Yeah.
or afternoons out. During a sports event, that's a completely different thing. Have we?
So we've communicated, but this is gonna be to an extent out of our control. Mr. Bedoris has communicated and will be communicating to our visitors.
Mhm.
We'll be directing the buses to go out Walnut, just like during the day, and we're asking them to communicate to their fan bases as well. We will continue to send out periodic communication. That being said, I think there will certainly be a struggle with, visiting fan bases. I mean,
Yeah.
it will help to an extent, but
Or home fan bases.
I will say, it's never going, even without construction, trafficking around any school, though, not just ours, is very difficult. Believe it or not, in the mornings, the traffic at the high school in the lot, I can't speak to out on the roads, but in the lot is actually better than a typical year. It's been very, very good. In the afternoon, it proves to be a little bit more challenging here at the high school because the light to get on the 29 so long, so to get out on Walnut Street, it does back up. With that being said, this place is empty by 3:15. That's a lot of people to move. I did get caught, to somebody's point here. I came back yesterday, I had forgot something here at the office, and I came back around 6 o'clock. I think Mrs. Keller was pulling out and I was pulling in, and there was a line of kids getting out of practice. And I got stuck over there for a while. You know, I was kind of pulled over to the side, hugged up against the fence, and I saw a few high school drivers not sure what to do. So it was a little bit of it, because everybody was coming out and there I was coming in. I'm like, well, I guess I shouldn't have done that. Probably should have just pulled all the way around. So that was an example of an after hour thing. So we'll continue to communicate it, but outside of that, I'm not sure what we can do. We did explore during the construction process or the planning process, we did explore doing an access road onto the property a different way. What we ran into was some of the permitting that was required. We were going to have to do it onto 29, which was not going to be feasible with the state highway.
Well, this would be from the campus that we have right now out to Camelot.
So we
subdivision.
only have one spot of property that we can do that, and it would be a road that would go, it'd go right in between two people's yards. So to get out to Camelot, we only own property that goes between two homes. I'm not very good with this, so forgive me, but there are two homes back here.
That way?
Remember when we looked at the original plans to look at the baseball field, is it that way? Those two homes, you would have to drive right into the yards to put a drive, and it would be pretty extensive. That you would put through, you would also put it through the middle of our practice field as well, so we'd have to relocate those.
You realize I came from a company that builds construction equipment. We can put one of those babies in a couple hours.
We gotta have permits though.
Get a good taste of traffic on Friday, but not a day I felt we'll get it out.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And I do think it's gonna be tough to expect visiting fans to understand that there is an interest on Walnut Street. They're
Yeah.
probably not even familiar with
Well,
Walnut Street.
If it ends up really bad on Friday, that'd be just good.
It'll
Yeah,
be a
Yeah.
taste.
Because this is
Yeah.
all Rochester people on Friday.
Yeah, it'll be a taste.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, we have 3
Thank you.
motions for bid packages. We can go through these one at a time. So the first one is there a motion for approval of construction bid packages for RHS Science Wing Student Services and Outdoor Athletic Complex? Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion, further discussion? Okay. Okay, call the roll.
Mr. Childs? Mr. Childs?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Carly?
Yes.
Mr. Joel?
Yes.
Dr. Magulius?
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds?
yes,
Mr. Hannah?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion for approval of Rochester CUSD 3A bid package 2 contract awards to multiple subcontractors?
Like that motion as well.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion?
Can you explain this process on this? It's just a.
So I think it's because we hired SM Wilson. They're accepting bids as, then they're all subcontractors. And maybe you can add to that, Rick.
CM at risk is a little different than CM agent. And as a CM at risk, we will hold contracts, but the bids are still to the school district. School district has to allocate to those to us. Okay. So that we can write the contracts to them.
Thank you.
I knew that.
You want to?
Thank you.
He just didn't want to steal your thunder a second time.
Construction guys taking over. Yeah.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I got some questions about the busing issues.
Okay, this is about contract awards for, where was it? I just lost my motion. Is this about the contract awards to multiple subcontractors?
No,
Okay,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, that's okay. Call the roll.
Mr. Hannah?
Yes.
Mr. Childs?
Yes.
Dr. Magulius?
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes,
Mr. Carly?
Yes.
Mr. Joel?
Yes.
Okay, and then we have a motion for approval of assignment. Is there a motion for approval of assignment of construction contract awards for Rochester CUSD 3A bid package 2 to construction manager SM Wilson? Okay. Thank you. Any discussion on that? Okay, call the roll.
Mr. Carly,
Yes.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Dr. Maglius,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. Childs,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds.
Yes.
Okay, and one more. Is there a motion for approval of GMP change order with construction manager SM Wilson for Rochester bid package 2?
It's a check order. There was no information.
Let me go back. You know,
Greg, the GMP change order, please.
Original GMP was the package 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're making a change order to that to increase it to the package 2.
Okay. Bid package
That's why it's
one
called
was the tennis
that.
court.
The
Right?
package 1 is the tennis court.
Bid package one and then. bid
That was the
package-
original GMP,
Yeah.
and amended to it, to increase it on up to this one.
Thank you. Got it. I'll make that motion.
okay. Is there a second?
Okay.
Is there any discussion? Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Carly,
Yes.
Mr. Hannah,
Yes.
Dr. Maglius,
Yes.
Mr. Jewell,
Yes.
Mr. Childs,
Yes.
Mrs. Reynolds.
Yes.
Okay, now we have a discussion, not an approval, of the NCL government capital lease agreement. And Mr. Cox, you've been doing some research on this and are going to provide an update.
I don't have much to add to the discussion from the 2 weeks ago. I say the previous month, it's just been a couple of weeks ago. So this isn't, just for a refresher, this isn't a option as an alternate funding tool for the board to be able to approve and fund capital projects. One of the things that we're considering is looking at the scoreboard lighting and sound piece of the project to fund through this. Does not necessarily mean that we will. Until we get the cost, which will be here in September for the final cost on the RFP of the scoreboard lighting and sound, we can't put a lease in front of you. That's why we need to change that to discussion. We did discuss this in detail at the building committee, talk through some questions and pros and cons of this there. We are going to move it into the finance committee as well, but we want to get a lease before we take it to the finance committee. The only thing new that I would have that we didn't report on last month, just as information and education about this, is looking at what the interest rates would be for this. And they change day by day, but those interest rates range in the 6.5% range, north or south, depending on the day, which would be similar going to the bank and getting a loan for a private company in a cost of a project like this. It would not be a callable project, so we would not have no penalty if we paid it off early. For example, if we did a 5-year lease and we paid it off in 3, there wouldn't be no penalty, and there's not the same type of fees associated with this as you would with, say, selling the alternate revenue bonds like we did the project. So it is a tool that we're interested in learning more about, but we're not ready to make any recommendation. Certainly can't do that without seeing an example of what that lease would be, and we need the cost for that. So just a little bit more information, wanted to put it in front of you again, to be able to read and ask any questions that if we need to research, we can to bring to the committee and answer to the board. No earlier than September, that would be the earliest we would act. It could potentially even be later than that. We may decide that this is not the right tool for us at this time, and we may do it in the future or decide this isn't the tool we want to use for this district.
Any questions right now on that?
Let me see more detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think finance needs to go through it. Building committee was fine with it. I mean, it made sense for
Yeah.
what we were doing, but we need to look at it from the financial side.
From the lens of the finance
Yeah.
committee. Okay, we'll be doing that. Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of Great Places to Work certification. So in our efforts to continue to recognize and value our current teachers and staff while creating thanks, guys. Bye.
you.
While creating an environment that will continue to recruit and retain the most qualified candidates in the field, we were presented with the Great Places to Work certification option at our last meeting as a way to give staff another avenue to provide feedback to help continuously improve the working environment. Well, I should ask for a motion first, but is there anything you want to add before I move into
Yes.
motion and discussion?
Based on the discussions the board had last month, we went back and discussed this, and one thing that you could consider as an option. The reason this is brought forth before the board, obviously, we want to continue to provide feedback Our staff wants ways to be assured that it is anonymous feedback or confidential feedback to be able to do, and we want to continue to improve that, and also have some way to validate and show that the results are happening, which is what brought this forward. With that being said, we're also starting in September, the stay interviews. It could be that the board and us as a district and a staff can wait and see what that feedback looks like and what generates from that, and then do this at a later time or not at all. Or if you say, this is the process we do want to use right now, you certainly can do that. But that was one discussion we did have, is that we are launching the stay interviews in September. It could be duplicative work. Let's see if that works like we hope and think it will work. And if that takes care of some of the, helps with some of the issues we're seeking to do, that could be a good first step.
I'm not so concerned about getting a certificate. I'm more concerned about having third parties come in and help analyze if we're doing things wrong. I think that's what we hear from the community. We're hearing, hey, we want to make sure we retain these people, and that, granted, as we've seen,
96%.
we have a 96% retention rate. I mean, I think that's something that needs to be a scream from the mountaintops, but we can always do better, right? And I think whether you get the certificate or you do the stay interviews or whatever it is, you're at least acknowledging the fact that you're trying to make it a better workplace.
The part I like is the anonymous, where they know it's anonymous as compared to others. We do have some other anonymous.
Thought exchange
Yes,
is anonymous, but there's a
but-
question, there is a.
Yes.
Some for
They
some
don't
it's out.
fully, yes.
Right.
But I would like to make a motion to table this until after we see how the stay interviews go.
And I want to ask, did we do stay interviews last year? I thought we started with those.
We did, but not with, we did a pilot, but we did not do it district-wide. It's gonna launch district-wide in September. After we've, taken the feedback from the pilots and made some tweaks.
Okay.
Could you provide a little color on how the stay interviews, how they'll be conducted? Is it a third party, or how are we?
Yeah, so it's launched.
I know we talked about it.
Yeah, and we did a little presentation on that. It'll be launched, random sampling. So it will go out monthly to random sampling of staff. It goes through Thought Exchange. We do not analyze the data either. It's broken down for us.
Yeah.
And we're able to get that feedback and then report back to it. And then we have monthly meetings with our representatives from there to say, hey, what was the most highly rated thoughts? What are some of the highly rated ideas? The key there then is to communicate back. Here's what we've heard. Here's what we learned. Now, how can we go design solutions around that?
Yeah, I'll make a comment on the Great Place to Work. I worked in an organization and we went through that process, and I've worked at different companies that have done employee surveys. I would just highlight the Great Places to Work. There's no magic. It's just one third party that does survey. They all have a cost, so I don't know that the cost is less or more with them. There's a cost with all of them, some of them very significant. I thought that the process was good. They definitely have a branding and a niche with the Great Places to Work, and kind of a credentialing, which is important to some. I think that's less important probably for the teachers in the school, but the feedback is excellent. So I'm not wed to that particular vendor, but the fact that it's a well-regarded third party is important. And there are other, maybe others that we could explore, but I'm not, I'm certainly supportive of using them or another third party. And the idea of maybe getting some more insights is helpful, but I think it's so critical to get that feedback that I'm not against doing both. And I think they're very different. The idea of asking questions about, through a typical stay interview or doing a survey, and then the benefit of having that benchmark, you can do pulse surveys, work on things and move forward. And I think that would be, critical in the workforce today. So I'm supportive of either approach and love to hear the other board members' thoughts.
I think I'm generally agree as far as getting the feedback. I think there's underlying concern of like the anonymous, right? Is that a concern of going to principals, administrators, and needs to direct the board? Is it just the questions that are being asked? I do have concerns with this company not necessarily having a big focus. I did find 7, not 6 schools, but Paris was the only one in sort of outside of the Chicagoland area here in Illinois that had it. Growing up over closer to Paris, I don't think it was necessarily something that was going to attract a whole lot of people. If you're going to be a teacher in Paris, it probably wasn't certificate. So, I think there's probably there's some good things to gather from this exercise.
Oh, yeah.
Looking at, we want the feedback from the teacher, we want it to be real, you can't ask them in the hallway and get that candid feedback of those challenges. But I do think we need to look at what their concern is of the anonymous nature of it. Is it because they feel like they're gonna get a bad assignment on something and I don't know, the classroom has more wild kids or something, I don't know. But I think we need to explore that. And so if the state interviews start to help that process and guide that, I just don't think now is necessarily the time to proceed with this. So.
Well, I think I need a second to my motion then, right? If I made a motion to table
We
it.
haven't even made a motion for
I was
it
gonna
yet.
say, if we.
Oh, I made a motion to table it.
No action.
No
Or you-
action,
or you can
okay.
Make a motion to table. That's
Okay.
fine. Either way, you guys, however you guys.
Yeah,
want to handle it.
I was just going to, just
Mhm.
looking at consensus here and ask if there's a motion for it right now at all. Or if we're going to table this. Okay,
We could revisit in the spring. I mean, you can either kick it and say, nah, this isn't for us, or you could say, hey, let's wait and revisit this in the spring. We could revisit it later in the year.
I would like to revisit it, and would you be able to research and find maybe one or two others that are similar, that maybe focus a little more on schools? Just so we can kind of compare.
okay,
And I
Good.
assume there's a cost of thought exchange.
Yes.
I mean, we don't want to double that up yet.
Yeah, different tools, completely different tools, but, yes, need to be considered.
okay. You tabled. Do I need a second?
No, he says we can just table
I
it,
think
so
so too. All right,
that was my mistake.
that's okay. Perfect, thank you. All right. Let's see, no new business, so we're gonna move into closed session. Is there a motion under closed session for the purposes of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body and collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees?
Second,
Thank you. Call the roll.
Mrs. Reynolds,
yes.
Mr. Carly,
Yes.
Mr. Hannah, Mr. Joel,
Yes.
Mr. Childs,
Yes.
Dr. McGuinness.
Yes,
Young whippersnapper jumping, beating me to the.
okay, very good. There are lunches to grab